Welcome to today's deep dive. We've got a really incredibly fascinating mission ahead of us today.
We really do.
Yeah, we're taking this vast, just completely eclectic stack of sources. I mean, we are ranging from 17th century Jesuit philosophers and the Russian novelist Leo Tolstoy, all the way to like modern elite NFL coaches and even the country music of Garth Brooks.
It's quite the mix, yeah.
It really is. And we are using all this diverse material to decode what we're calling the curriculum of failure.
Right.
So the ultimate goal here for you listening is to answer one central question, which is, when life inevitably knocks you down, what specific actionable choices can you make to use that adversity not as some kind of affliction, but as a primary tool to come back fundamentally stronger?
And it's a critical curriculum to master, mainly because most of us are never taught how to actually process a massive setback.
Yes.
We're taught how to pursue success all day long, but we are left entirely to our own devices when the bottom completely drops out.
Which brings us to the baseline for our conversation today. Before we even talk about failure, we really have to talk about what we are actually losing when we fail.
Right, the stakes.
Exactly. So to you listening, I want you to picture something for a second. You know that rare, quiet moment when you feel genuinely, just deeply at ease.
Mm-hmm.
Not the adrenaline rush of winning an award or, that distracted, buzzing high of a really busy day. Just quiet.
Yeah.
Like you're sitting on your porch with your morning coffee, the house is completely still, and for a split second, you just have no immediate desires. Everything just feels exactly right.
And that specific state of being is, well, it's so elusive.
It really is.
It's not triumphant, right? It's just a profound sense of harmony with yourself and your environment. We all kind of brush up against it, but we rarely stop to examine what that physiological and mental calmness is actually signaling to us.
Because we usually just enjoy it for the 10 seconds it lasts before remembering an email we have to send.
Exactly, yeah.
But our sources today actually give that specific feeling a name. It's a concept drawn from the modern spiritual teachings of Abraham Hicks, and it's called vibrational alignment.
Right.
Now, I know vibrational alignment can sound like a bumper sticker you'd buy at a crystal shop, but
It does a bit.
yeah, but when you strip away the New Age vernacular, the underlying psychology is actually profoundly practical. The idea is that anytime you feel that unforced sense of good, you have found alignment with your core, authentic self. And the implications of taking that seriously are just massive. Because if feeling quietly good is your internal nervous system signaling that you are aligned with your deeper nature, then the inverse must also be true.
Right.
Feeling chronically anxious or reactive or contracted, that isn't just a random bad mood. It is a blaring biological alarm bell.
Wow.
It's your system telling you that you've drifted really far from your center. And when you treat that observation as pure data, it stops being a mere psychological concept and becomes, well, a highly sensitive navigational instrument for your life. So we have this baseline of quiet, aligned ease. But let's be realistic, right? Life does not let you stay on that peaceful porch for very long.
Definitely not.
So what knocks us out of that alignment, almost always, it's adversity. I mean, it's a career failure, a sudden disruption, some kind of public humiliation, or just, your 5-year plan completely falling apart in your hands.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the first test in the curriculum of failure. Because when adversity ruins our alignment, our immediate, deeply human instinct is to aggressively try to fix the situation.
And that flailing instinct is completely universal, but it's actually the exact vulnerability that author Robert Greene warns about.
Right.
We want to regain that illusion of control immediately. So Greene analyzes this by looking at one of the 20th century's most consequential strategic blunders.
Okay.
In 1971, the New York Times began publishing the Pentagon Papers, and at the time, Henry Kissinger was the national security advisor, and his response to this leak was just this volcanic, all-consuming rage.
And it's a fascinating case study because, and we need to be really clear here for the listener, regardless of how anyone feels about the politics of the Nixon administration or the Vietnam War.
Right, absolutely.
We are looking at this strictly from a behavioral strategy standpoint, right? We're not taking sides. But strictly behaviorally, Kissinger's reaction was a masterclass in what not to do when you feel threatened.
Exactly. We have to unpack the psychology behind his reaction. Kissinger's alarm over these leaks wasn't just about national security. It was deeply tethered to his own ego. Powerful people rely heavily on the perception of total control. So when that leak happened, it shattered his illusion of invulnerability. He felt exposed, so his ego just panicked.
Wow.
He convinced himself the administration faced an existential threat, and his unchecked fury directly led to the formation of the Plumbers.
The covert White House unit.
Right, the unit that eventually broke into the Democratic Party offices at the Watergate Hotel. So the chain of events his overreactions set into motion ultimately destroyed the Nixon presidency.
But Green points out a crucial detail here, right? The publication of the Pentagon Papers wasn't actually an existential threat to the administration.
No, not at all.
It was just a PR nightmare. Like, it was a
Correct.
manageable embarrassment.
And that is the tragedy of the whole situation. It was Kissinger's inability to process his own loss of alignment that doomed them. He lacked what Green beautifully calls aristocratic indifference.
Aristocratic indifference.
Yeah. By refusing to just let the moment pass, Kissinger transformed a temporary, painful embarrassment into a permanent, fatal catastrophe.
Jeez.
So Green derives a very elegant law from this dynamic, which is the harder we try to fix our mistakes, the worse we often make them. What's fascinating here is how this connects brilliantly to a concept from the 17th century Jesuit philosopher Balthazar Gracian. He wrote, "There is no revenge like oblivion, for it is the entombment of the unworthy in the dust of their own nothingness."
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because revenge like oblivion is an incredibly intense phrase.
It is.
So is overreacting to failure essentially like struggling in quicksand? Like, you step into a mess, you panic, and the harder you thrash around trying to fix your situation, the faster you sink.
That's it. Exactly.
Your own frantic energy is actually what buries you because you're feeding the crisis with your panic.
That is the perfect mechanical analogy, yeah. The quicksand doesn't actually pull you down, your thrashing pulls you down.
Right.
The opposite of thrashing is the oblivion Gresham talks about. And it's vital to understand that this isn't passivity or just giving up. It is a highly disciplined non-reaction.
It's active.
Very active. You are making a deliberate act of will to refuse to lend your oxygen to a fire that would otherwise just burn itself out.
But, I mean, how does someone listening actually practice oblivion in modern daily life? If my boss yells at me or a colleague undermines me, I can't exactly just act like a 17th century philosopher and banish them to the dust of their own nothingness.
Well, you apply it in the micro moments. Let's say you receive a highly inflammatory, toxic email from a coworker. Your heart rate spikes. You lose your vibrational alignment instantly.
The quicksand beckons.
Exactly. Thrashing would be immediately firing back a defensive, angry paragraph. You've now escalated the conflict and tethered your energy to their toxicity.
Okay.
Oblivion, in this scenario, is reading the email, taking a breath, closing your laptop, and leaving them on read.
Oh, wow.
You let their hostility sit in a vacuum. You actively decline to be pulled out of your center by forces that only have power over you if you grant them a response.
So you literally starve the failure of oxygen.
Right.
That makes total sense for a leaked document or an angry email or an uncontrollable external event. But we kind of have to transition to the next phase of the curriculum because oblivion definitely has a limit.
It does.
What happens when the failure is undeniable, it is highly public, and the fault is entirely yours?
Yeah, that's different.
Because you can't just apply oblivion to a massive career collapse.
Yeah.
Like, if you are fired from your job for underperforming, you can't just ignore it and hope the failure dies of neglect.
In those moments of genuine personal collapse, alignment looks very, very different. Indifference would just be delusion at that point.
Right.
Reclaiming your center requires something much harder, which is rigorous, honest self-examination. And we get a masterclass in this from George Raveling, who is one of basketball's great coaching minds. He spent time profiling how elite sports coaches deal with the very public, deeply agonizing reality of being fired.
And for the listener who isn't a head coach, we should probably map this to everyday life, right? Elite sports firings are essentially the same feeling as being publicly let go from a company you poured your soul into.
Oh, absolutely.
We're going through a brutal, sudden breakup where all your mutual friends are watching the fallout. Your entire identity is stripped away in front of an audience.
And the visceral shame is identical. Raveling points to Charlie Strong to demonstrate the right response here. So shortly after Strong was fired as the head football coach at the University of Texas, which was a highly publicized, humiliating dismissal.
Right.
He didn't go out and immediately look for validation. He didn't complain to the press. He went home, isolated himself in his office, picked up a yellow legal pad, and just forced his brain into an analytical mode.
Wow.
Day after day, he just wrote, what could I have done better? What really happened here? What will I change when I get my next opportunity?
See, here's where it gets really interesting, because we see this pattern repeated across multiple sports.
Yeah.
Take Sean McDermott.
Yes.
After 9 seasons and an incredible 98-50 record in Buffalo, the Bills coach was let go after a really painful playoff loss. Now, most people with that kind of stellar resume would immediately jump to the next lucrative coaching gig just to, soothe their ego.
Which is just a quick rebound, right? It's the ultimate form of thrashing in the quicksand. It completely avoids the pain of reflection.
But McDermott didn't rebound. He moved his family to Charlotte and created this rigorous new daily routine entirely from scratch.
Yeah.
He started doing the school drop-offs. He did morning workouts. He assigned himself 6 to 8 hours of daily film study.
That's massive discipline.
But what really stands out to me is how he actively sought out totally different paradigms.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he went to Oklahoma City Thunder coach Mark Daigneault to study how empathy shapes elite performance.
Mm-hmm.
He visited the legendary wrestler Dan Gable. He even attended a PricewaterhouseCoopers corporate leadership conference for an intentional growth journey.
The mechanics of McDermott's choices there are just brilliant. I mean, why visit a wrestler like Dan Gable?
Right.
Because wrestling requires an individual mindset of sustaining excellence even when your body is entirely broken. It's a perfect metaphor for a fired coach.
Oh, that's good.
And why attend a corporate PwC conference? Because the corporate world relies on entirely different human management structures than the militaristic hierarchy of football. McDermott realized his mental nap was too small. Dan Quinn did the exact same thing after being fired by the Atlanta Falcons following an 0-5 start. Quinn refused to play the victim, publicly stating, "I've got to gain something from this."
I hear all of this, but I have to push back a little here.
Yeah.
On behalf of anyone listening who has ever spiraled alone in their room after a failure.
Fair enough.
Wait, isn't there a very fine line between diagnosing what went wrong and just endlessly beating yourself up in an empty room? How do we ensure self-examination doesn't become wallowing?
It's a vital distinction, yeah. And the difference lies entirely in the direction the questions are pointing. Wallowing is inherently backward-looking and identity-focused.
Like, poor me.
Right? It sounds like, why am I so terrible? Why does this always happen to me? I am a failure.
Mm-hmm.
The self-examination Charlie Strong and Sean McDermott are doing is strictly forward-looking and mechanics-focused. It sounds like, where was the flaw in my process? What specific habit will I change next time?
Oh, I see.
They bypass the amygdala, the emotional center of the brain, and engage the prefrontal cortex. They are treating the failure not as a permanent indictment of their soul, but strictly as raw data for their next iteration.
That distinction really matters. You're analyzing the machine, not condemning the operator.
Exactly.
But that leads us directly to the next phase of the curriculum, because building that daily scaffolding keeps you sane.
Yeah.
But how do they actually physically manage to endure the isolation?
Yeah.
Like, how do you lose your entire identity and not just spiral into clinical depression? They didn't just sit in a dark room meditating on their hurt feelings. They engaged in highly structured work.
And this brings us to the philosophical underpinning of why structured routine actually saves you.
Okay.
The Russian novelist Leo Tolstoy, in his book A Calendar of Wisdom, addresses the fundamental relationship between work and the health of the human soul.
Mm-hmm.
He pulls from the Enlightenment philosopher Montesquieu, who made a truly counterintuitive observation, especially for an era that glorified aristocratic leisure. Montesquieu wrote that constant idleness should actually be considered one of the tortures of hell rather than one of the joys of paradise.
Wait, I have to challenge Montesquieu on this.
Yeah.
Because that is so completely counter to how we view success today.
It really is.
We all dream of the early retirement, the endless beach vacation, the idea of finally having enough money to do absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Are you saying the ultimate modern dream is actually a psychological nightmare?
When you look at the psychology of purpose, it absolutely is. The human brain is a problem-solving machine. It requires friction.
Friction?
Yes. Without structure, without a task to push against, the mind turns inward and begins to consume itself.
Wow.
We see this all the time. People finally retire to the beach, lose their daily scaffolding, and plunge into severe depression. Montesquieu recognized that idleness doesn't restore the human spirit, it dissolves it.
Jeez.
And Tolstoy reinforces this by quoting Thomas Carlyle, who said, "As soon as a person starts to work, all the demons leave him and cannot approach him."
So work acts as the physical scaffolding. Like, let's visualize this for you listening. When your house is burned down in a massive failure, your identity is sitting in ashes.
Right.
The daily routine of work, whether it's writing on a legal pad, doing 6 hours of film study, or just waking up at 7 a.m. to do the school drop-off, that work gives your mind a safe, rigid structure to stand on while you rebuild. Carlyle's demons are anxiety, rumination, and regret. But if your working memory is occupied with analyzing film or organizing a schedule, those demons literally do not have the cognitive space to enter. Work gives the endless, terrifying days a safe container.
It does, but we must issue a profound warning here because there is a trap in this phase of the curriculum.
Oh.
Yes, Tolstoy offers a vital caveat to this idea of work as salvation. He warns that the work must not become excessive. It cannot morph into a new form of quicksand. If you're working 18 hours a day to physically exhaust yourself so you don't have to think about the failure, you aren't doing the curriculum. You're just numbing yourself.
Just a different kind of running away.
Exactly. Tolstoy writes, "A good spiritual disposition can be destroyed by excessive work as well as by idleness."
So the target you are aiming for is engagement without exhaustion. Work should be the container that holds your self-examination, not a hiding place from it.
Precisely.
You need stillness to reflect, but that stillness needs a structured routine to exist within.
Yeah.
But let's say you do all of this perfectly. You avoid the Kissinger overreaction. You pull out the yellow legal pad to analyze the data. You build the daily scaffolding of work to keep the demons at bay.
Okay.
But deep down, in your quietest moments, you are still absolutely furious that your original life plan failed.
Right, the resentment.
Yeah. You wanted that specific promotion, that specific relationship, that specific outcome. How do you let go of the anger over the lost plan?
Overcoming that lingering resentment is, well, it's the ultimate test of vibrational alignment. To explore this, we turn to the reflections of Hall of Fame football coach Tony Dungy. Dungy draws on a very provocative concept from the Christian tradition, specifically the Apostle Paul's first letter to the Corinthians. Paul proposes a radical reframing of failure. He suggests that what looks like a disaster from inside our incredibly limited human perspective may actually be the unfolding of a much wiser, larger design. Paul writes about how the foolish plan of God is wiser than the wisest of human plans.
Meaning the underlying intelligence of the universe vastly exceeds whatever tidy 5-year plan we typed up on our laptops.
Exactly. The pain we feel from failure usually comes from the gap between our expectations and reality.
Right.
Our most confident schemes go wrong, not necessarily because we are incompetent, but simply because we lack the vantage point to see far enough down the timeline of our own lives. And Dungy beautifully pairs this ancient theology with modern folk wisdom from Garth Brooks.
I love this pairing so much. Garth Brooks' classic song, Unanswered Prayers.
Yeah. The narrator in that song runs into his high school flame and suddenly realizes he needs to thank God for not giving him what he once desperately begged for. The life he ultimately built was vastly richer than the narrow path he thought he wanted as a teenager. Sometimes the universe telling you no is the greatest protective gift you can receive.
So what does this all mean? Because I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
On the surface, this sounds dangerously close to fatalism. I mean, just a few minutes ago, we praised Sean McDermott for grinding through 8 hours of daily film study to actively improve his mechanics.
Yeah.
And now are we telling the listener to just throw their hands up, abandon their ambition, and simply surrender to the universe because their plans don't matter anyway?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the tension between effort and surrender is actually the core of this entire philosophy. Surrender is not about giving up on your ambition or stopping your hard work.
Okay.
It is about releasing your rigid grip on a very specific identity.
Oh, like saying, I must be the head coach of Texas, and if I am not that specific thing, my life has absolutely no value.
Exactly. The suffering comes from the attachment. When Charlie Strong or Dan Quinn do the exhausting work of self-reflection, they aren't resigning themselves to defeat.
Right.
They are actively releasing the identity of the coach who got fired so that a new, unwritten reality can emerge. The problem isn't that we have plans. The problem is that we arrogantly assume our plans represent the absolute ceiling of what's possible for us.
Wow.
To borrow a phrase, the map we draw for our lives is simply smaller than the actual territory. Surrender is trusting that if you do the grueling work of the curriculum, the new territory that opens up will be infinitely better than the small map you are so angry about losing.
The map is smaller than the territory. That is such a brilliant way to conceptualize it. So as we bring this deep dive to a close, let's look at the ultimate result of mastering this curriculum.
Yeah.
Eleanor Roosevelt famously said, I am who I am today because of the choices I made yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
which, depending on how bad your yesterday was, could sound pretty grim.
It could, yeah.
But in the context of our sources, it's actually an invitation to immense power. If yesterday's failures made today's self, then today's choices, your response to today's devastation, are actively manufacturing tomorrow's self.
It completely illuminates the difference between merely surviving an event and actively utilizing it. There's a maxim from the minister Eric Butterworth, which is, don't go through life, grow through life.
Grow through life.
Yes. Consider two people experiencing the exact same devastating career collapse. One person just goes through it, they complain, they outlast it, they barely survive, and they eventually drag themselves to a new job.
Right.
But the other person grows through it. They process the pain, build the scaffolding, analyze the data, and emerge with entirely new capacities and a deeper understanding of themselves.
And the difference between those two people isn't a matter of luck or raw talent. It's entirely a matter of choice.
Absolutely.
It's whether they were willing to treat the failure as a curriculum to be studied, rather than a curse to be endured. Which brings us full circle right back to where we started on the porch, which is vibrational alignment.
And the beautiful realization here is that alignment isn't just a static trophy you achieve once and place on a shelf.
Right.
It's a dynamic orientation. You have to continually reclaim it through non-reaction, through honest self-examination, through disciplined work, and through surrendering your outdated maps. But the absolute most important takeaway from all our sources today is found in one short closing concept, which is helping helps the helper.
Helping helps the helper. That phrase almost feels out of left field at first, especially when we've been discussing Kissinger's rage and Tolstoy's demons.
It does, but it earns its place because it reveals the true endpoint of this entire journey. Genuine growth through adversity is never just a private, isolated achievement. It naturally radiates. The coach who learns from his humiliating firing eventually takes the field again. And because of his failure, he understands his players' struggles on a much deeper level.
That makes so much sense.
The person who navigates the wreckage of their own collapsed life becomes a calmer, wiser, and vastly more empathetic presence for everyone around them. Alignment isn't just about you feeling good. It's about what you become capable of offering to a hurting world.
You become the person who can actually guide others out of the quicksand because you remember exactly what it feels like to thrash around in it.
Exactly.
Which leaves me with a final unscripted thought for you listening to ponder, something that builds on everything we've discussed today.
Okay.
If navigating failure is actually the ultimate curriculum for developing profound personal growth, deep empathy, and true vibrational alignment, what does that mean for the people who experience early, completely uninterrupted success?
Oh, that's interesting.
Right. We look at those people with such intense envy. But are the successful people we admire actually operating at a massive developmental disadvantage? Are they unknowingly trapped in a highly fragile state of being, simply because life hasn't cared enough to hand them the curriculum of failure yet?
That's a powerful thought.
It really makes you wonder who the lucky ones actually are. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.